Lamers. I'm from the Netherlands and I live in Amsterdam. I work for the Association of Dutch Music Venues and Festivals. I will be hosting this webinar together with three co-presenters today from Spain, Belgium, and Norway. These are Markte Tangen, Marianne de Wolf, and Eneko Barberena. My role will be more of a chairman. The really interesting things will be told by Eneko, Marianne, and Markte. This is the fourth webinar in a series of 12 about all kinds of entrepreneurship in music. This fourth webinar is about what social entrepreneurship is and what it can look like in practice. Before I go on, I would like to ask you as a viewer a quick question, and you can answer this poll I'm showing now. Hopefully this works, so I would like to ask you to enter this poll. I see that 2 persons are replying, 3 out of 12. Hi everybody, 12 people. I will ask this question at the end as well, and then I'm curious if everything you're going to see is going to change your view or your thoughts or ideas about yourself being a social entrepreneur. Almost everybody replied. 8 out of 14. There's a new one, 2 new ones who joined. I see that it's sort of stopping now, the answering, so let's keep it like this. 8 out of 14. Okay, so I'll go back to it's 9. I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so it's 50. Oh, there are more answerings coming in. Okay, answers coming in. Okay. I'm going back to the presentation. In a minute, I will tell you a little bit more about myself and my work. But first, I would like to tell you what you can expect the next hour and let's say 50 minutes, and what the structure of the webinar is. We expect to finish around 4:30 at the latest. So the structure of the webinar looks like this. After pointing out some main goals of this webinar and a brief introduction of myself and my work, I'll give a short introduction to the concept of social entrepreneurship, so what it is and what it can look like. This is followed by 3 presentations by the 3 co-presenters. They will each have 20 minutes to present an interesting case study, which they are involved in themselves. It's going to be a 15-minute presentation, and then there will be 5 minutes time left for questions and answers. After those 3 case studies, I will summon up the 3 personal definitions of social entrepreneurship, and I'll summon up the lessons the presenters want to give you. And to finish off, I will give you the email addresses of all of us, and if you have questions after the webinar or during the webinar, you can always email them, and then we will get back to you. So there are mainly 2 goals of this webinar. The first one is to show that there is not just one clear definition of social entrepreneurship. And it's also not such a big problem that there isn't. I will show you by the hand of a more theoretical or academic approach, and there's also a more practical approach you can look at social entrepreneurship. And the second goal is that music professionals, and the 3 co-presenters are music professionals, they will give practical tips to other music professionals, which you are. So just quickly about my work. I work at the Association of Dutch Music Venues and Festivals. They are spread over the whole country, as you can see on the little map. You've got 104 members, of which 57 are music venues and 47 are music festivals. And we care about the common interests of our members in relation to the government, audiences, performing artists, and we organize conferences. For example, the conference you can see on the picture, it was in September. Collect data, for example, this publication about our members, and we promote professionalism in the sector and pop culture as a performing art. Not only in the Netherlands there exists a association as we are, but there are ones in Spain, France, England, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Italy, Belgium, Germany, Switzerland. And all these national associations are represented in Europe by Live DMA, and it's an umbrella organization, as you can see on the map as well. If you want more information about Live DMA, you can go to their website. So back to my work. In my daily work, I deal a lot with national lawmaking and laws. It can be fiscal law, privacy law, labor law. And we are operating more or less in between like the government layers and the work floor, so the music and the festivals themselves. We are also sort of a knowledge center for our members, so we get a lot of questions from people who work at the music festivals and venues. And the more than 6,000 people who work at our music venues and festivals, 2/3 of them is volunteer and 1/3 is paid. And if you look at the people who work there, then they all have at least 3 things in common, and most probably you will recognize those. They are all music lovers to the bone. Second one is that they are highly intrinsic motivated. And the third one is that they are hands-on people. They like to get into action and do things rather than theorize only. So that was something about my work for introduction. And now let's go to the theory of social entrepreneurship. In literature, there's been written a lot about social entrepreneurship. And in literature, you can find several definitions or approaches. And one of them is the way it is formulated here. So it's more of a process by which citizens build or transform institutions to find solutions for, and the problems which are mentioned here are pretty big problems, like poverty, environmental destruction, corruption, and it always has the goal of making lives better for many. But if you look at this definition, then it's a very broad one, and it's trying to tackle like very big social and problems which are almost global. And if you follow this approach, this definition, then also Mahatma Gandhi could be a social entrepreneur, or Nelson Mandela could be a social entrepreneur. But if you look further in literature, then it also gets a little bit more compact or smaller. So Greg Dees is seen as one of the first ones who wrote about social entrepreneurship. He wrote a book in 1998, which I'm going to put on a list. I'll put on the website of STAMP after the webinar, so I'll give you a list of interesting literature. And he's talking about new combinations of people and resources to improve society's capacity to address problems. And if you look at what a social entrepreneur is, according to Greg Dees, then he is mentioning that he or she tries to create public value, acts boldly, and, for example, exhibits a strong sense of accountability. And especially if you look at those two, like the boldness and strong sense of accountability, then I think the 3 presentations you're going to see by the co-presenters show that boldness and also the strong sense of accountability. So That was a brief introduction about the theory, and like I said, I will put a list of interesting literature on the STEMP website after the webinar. Now let's go to some to the practice. Like I said, we have 3 presentations by 3 music professionals from, like I said, Norway, Belgium, and Spain. 2 work for a music venue, and 1 works for a music festival. And all 3 are, all in their own way, a social entrepreneur. And I asked them, or we agreed to, that they will give their own personal definition of what, according to them, is social entrepreneurship. And they will talk about their project they're working on. And after every 15-minute presentation, they will give 3 lessons which could be interesting for the viewer as well. And after the 15-minute presentation, there will be time for questions and answers. And like I said earlier, if there are more questions, then it's not a problem. I will give the email addresses, so it's always possible to get into contact with them. Let me briefly tell something about the 3 presentations, and after that I will give the word to Enneko. So the first case study will be done by Enneko, and he works for a music venue in Durango in the Basque country of Spain. And the music venue strives for the survival of the Basque culture and language. In the second presentation, he will give directly the word to Mariam. Mariam worked for a music venue in Dixmuide in Belgium, and they see our environment endangered, and they try to work as CO2 neutral as possible, and they do it by an interesting project. And the third presentation will be done by Marte, and she works for a festival in Norway, and they, as a music festival, they take the responsibility to integrate refugees in operating the festival as a way to integrate as much people in the local society as possible. And what you will see is that all 3 presenters have in common that they love music, and they put heart and soul in giving stage to musical talent. But they also try to do things differently than others. They see more and also other challenges in their local societies. So that's it for now. For me, I'll see you after the 3 presentations in a little hour. I will give the floor and word and screen now to Enneko. Good luck, Enneko.
Hi, everybody. Now I'm going to explain the case of Plateruena. First, I'm going to do the presentation, and when I finish it, you will have 5 questions using the chat. So I'm Eneko Barberena from the Basque Country, and I used to work in Plateruena. I love this saying. It's my favorite music group. It's a Basque group. One idea for my introduction. Plateruna works in a minority language and it has minority resources. In 2 words, what is social entrepreneurship for me? Cooperative work and social values. For me, they are the most important thing. I think that small is beautiful, but a small life is a very hard life. Cultural activities in Basque language are non-economical profit activities. So we are 1,100 people giving money to the project, and we are 15 workers. We have a big building for a small culture. We do more than 120 activities, but most of them are very small activities with few people. We are working for Basque language, but not only in Basque language. We work in other languages like Spanish, French, English, Wolof. We are associated like Key says in cultural life, it's the Basque associations, and Life DMA, the European Association. Yesterday, some years ago, the life was easier for us, and now change is not an option, and for us is an obligation. Everything is changing below us. We sometimes think that we are living in a movie called Trainspotting. Life is changing and we are a little bit lost in the new world. Our three problems are the typical problems. We have no money, we are in a small town, we are not in the city, and habits are changing. Rock and I said punk is death. This picture with hundreds of people is unfortunately not usual in our hall. And our three challenges are how we can organize money. Basque culture sometimes is not attractive for music professional promoters, and the people has new habits in the music world. But we are not going to surrender because social entrepreneurship is the way to fight against our problems. And so we have three possible solutions, or we have some ideas to forward. So one of our biggest processes, Sillargin Procesua. We did a participatory process with our partners, members of other social associations, the university, and we opened our hall and other social groups, and we increased our members in more than 400. So when we started 12 years ago, we were 700 partners, and now after this process, after this participatory process, we are more than 1,100. We are working together also with local music groups, and we do courses and formation for them. We are searching a sponsorship for music groups, and we do competition for inexperienced groups, and all of them are Basque, and they live in the Basque country or they sing in Basque language. And we are improving our social profile. We are working in Basque culture, we are working in progress in feminism, and we are working in progress in social economy. For us, they are very important things, all of them, but we have to learn more about feminist, and we have to learn more about cooperative economy and social economy in our bar, in our activities. And we are working with other cultural organizations. It's the only way to have a future. So we became members of Cultural Life one year ago, and also for Life DMA. And we have collaboration programs with the City Council Theatre, the library, the squatter movement. We are trying to have friends in all the places. We think that we should work with everybody, but with with our social profile. Also, we are trying to do programs together with cultural organizations of North Basque Country, actually France, but they are very interesting people, and we are open to learn. We also have something to learn, and for us it's very important. And also we are working with the Basque government, local administration, the Spanish government. We are working with together. My conclusions. For us, we have minority sources because we are part of a minority language. We are only 600,000, but we think that we have big communities. And I'm going to give you three possible lessons. They are, I think, small lessons, but we have learned that. First, you need a huge agreement between members and workers about the mission of your organization. We have discussed a lot between us about our mission, about our work, our organization, and that's very essential to have a agreement in this. It's uh, a primary thing. Second, try to find foreign observers to evaluate your organization job. For us, the university was a very good friend to help us seeing our problems and working together to find solutions. And at last, we should be transparent with our job, organization, or economical situation. We think that here it's a very important thing that a transparency because we have to be honest with our partners, our workers, and with the people of our town. So that's all. It's not a lot of, but that's our experience. If you have any question, you can do now, or there is my mail, or I have a Twitter account, or you can do any question, and I will try to answer it. Our problems were, for example, our organization inside of our project. We need new ways to organize it, to do a more democratical organization, and we have to learn from others, like being more democratical than us, for example, because before we have a pyramidal organization when there was one boss, and now we have not bosses, we are more horizontal. So Durango is a nice town. If one day Yes, yes, we have in our town there is a feminist center. It's a city council's center to work with women, and they are co-working with a lot of organizations to speak about it and to make decisions about it. We in our region in the Basque Country, with the years, we are learning that feminism is it's a big issue for us because uh, we think that it's a problem that the women are in a second position in a lot of in a lot of questions of the life, and music also it's a place where you can fight it, you can work to do more equal uh, for us more equal organization. So we have learned, discussed, and we are working in it. I don't understand what's tackle. For my English, I'm like messy speaking English. I'm not good, sorry. Ah, yes, because we were speaking, for example, when we do our programmation with the music groups, it's they are a lot of men and few women. The sound engineer, for example, most of them are men, and there were a lot of questions like the position in the hall, like another questions that they are things that we should speak between us. We ask to the musicians, to the women, they how they feel in our hall. We have learned a lot speaking with them, and we have a little bit project about it, and other halls are doing the same in our country. But if you have any question more about it, you can write in me, and I will give you an answer. Eskerrik asko. It's a very nice thing to read something in my language. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for this opportunity. It's important for us. Good luck in your jobs and in your projects. Thank you.
Hi, hi all of you. My name is Marianne and I'm financial and project manager in 4AD Club. It's a venue in the western part of Belgium. Today I would like how our venue planted its own forest, and of course why we did that, as many of you might already wonder. This is what you'll get from me in the next 15 minutes. I'll start with the interesting assignment all three of us have received, namely to give my personal definition of social entrepreneurship. Then I'll move over to a brief presentation of my venue. After that, I will focus on the forest project and see if the project actually fits the definition I gave. And I would like to close the presentation with some lessons to be learned of this particular case. After that, there's some time for questions and answers. But as I said, like the other speakers, I was asked to give my personal definition on social entrepreneurship. Here it is. To develop your activities with a genuine respect for people and environment, and to continually challenge yourself in finding innovative and better ways to do so. Let's not analyze this at the moment, but see in the end if it matches the project or not. Now for a small presentation of my venue. 4AD is located in Exmede, which is in a rural area 30 kilometers from the French border. The town has only 16,000 inhabitants, scattered over 14 communities, of which 90% is open land, mainly agricultural. And you can see this very well in this picture of our impressive skyline. To avoid any misunderstandings, 4AD has nothing to do with the label. We only share the name. We host 50 live music shows a year, next to exhibitions, theater and film. Bands hail from all over the globe, and we have a special focus on young talent and experimental acts. The venue has a capacity of 250 people, and it's really true to the club feeling where you are like nose to nose with the artist. Off stage, we also provide support through our rehearsal facilities to musicians. We have a guest house which can be used for long-term residencies. And in the left corner, you see the picture of our rehearsal rooms. They are modeled after World War I trenches. Being close to the French border, as I mentioned, international and cross-border cooperation has been a large part of our activities these last 10 years. At this very moment, we are part of a European project called DEMO on sustainable development. You could see the partnership in the right corner. It's actually really interesting, so I would recommend you maybe to check it out if you have the time. And it's actually sustainable development that brought us here today at this webinar, which is actually funny because we never looked at ourselves as social entrepreneurs before that. Anyway, it's up to you to decide if we succeed the test. I have to admit, it's really hard for me to tell the story of our forest without giving the bigger picture. But since the bigger picture would need an extra webinar, I will only be able to give a glance of it. And hopefully it's sufficient to take you along in our story. I have to start with a little history. 4AD exists since '88, and the club was rooted in the '80s DIY music scene, and has therefore been socially engaged since the very beginning. During the following decades, the club became more professional, but always carefully guarded this initial philosophy. And you can see this also in this extract of our current mission statement. Sustainable development grew gradually more important for our venue over the years, and we are proud to say that we are one of the ecological pioneers within the Belgian cultural sector. In 2012, we felt a need for a framework and some proper guidance, and we subscribed for the first time to a provincial charter on sustainable development. For us, this was an important decision in order to measure, to set clear goals, and for the first time, we got into contact with external experts. Since then, we began to take ecology pretty serious at 4AD. As you can see in this graphic overview of all of our sustainable actions. Year after year, we reduce our carbon emissions by all sorts of actions, such as solar panels, LED lights, extensive use of rainwater, ecological insulation, and so on and so on. If you want to study this in detail, you can also find it on our website. But let's zoom in on the forest project, because that's why we are here today. This year we will plant the last 1.6 acres of our 16 acres forest. The 30,000 trees will, when fully grown over 40 years, compensate an average of 66 tons CO2 emissions per year. But why compensate? And why do this by planting a forest? And is this a venue's job to do so? I hope I can give you all the answers to these questions in the next minutes. In 2015, a study showed that despite our efforts, we still produced 66 tons of carbon emissions per year. This is the equivalent of 9 households. Nearly half of it was due to the transport of our audience. By nature, our activities are not super ecological. We generate an audience, and in our case, a lot of it comes by car. Why? Because there's no public transport after 9 p.m. So no way in changing that. We encourage people to come by bike or to carpool, but this is an aspect you can't really control, unlike other actions we do. Moreover, we learned from a mobility survey that people attending 4AD concert generally drive 35 kilometers one way. So at this very moment, the first seed of the forest ID was planted. We wondered what if we could compensate the emissions of our public in an eye-catching way, maybe and in the same time raise awareness on climate change in general, and maybe do something about the deplorable forest situation in our part of the country. And while we're at it, why not compensate the whole emission? And again, we were guided by external consultants. Zero Emission Solutions, who did a survey for us, they helped us to find clarifications. We soon came to the conclusion that we wanted to keep these solutions local. We did not want to plant trees in South America. We think if you want to raise awareness on climate change, that it's better to do so with a tangible and a local result. So our consultants suggested to search for a local reforesting project by a nature conservatory organization and to become sponsors ourselves. So we would pay for the seedlings and they would pay for the land, which would be a win-win situation. And we also insisted that the whole forest project should be paid for with external finances. So for us as a small venue, it was actually an interesting exercise in fundraising and finding sponsors. This next slide gives some data about trees in our part of the country. Forests in Flanders take in 12% of the total surface versus a European average of 43. The yearly decrease is minus 1.8 acres a day. Of course, forests, as you know, are vital for the absorption of CO2 emissions. And city forests and parks also protect our cities from increasing temperatures because of their cooling qualities. 2.5 acres of forest in Flanders neutralizes 10 tons of emissions. And those same 2.5 acres cost around 3,300 euros only for the seedlings, so not for land. The idea was to put up a large funding campaign with a sponsorship and a crowdfunding leg. And again, we attracted external expertise. A regional public charity supported our project and helped us putting on the campaign. The crowdfunding campaign ran over 2 months, from December 14 to January 15. And raised 5,500 euros. The sponsorship campaign raised another 20,000 euros. Individuals as well as companies seem to really care about the ecological message. And we had, of course, a super ambassador, which you can see in the picture. The face of the campaign was a comedian named Wouter de Pre. He's a very, very popular figure in Flanders, and he's also a friend of the house. He is well known to be a big supporter of trees, and when the campaign ran, he was in the middle of a public debate on a deforestation case, which was actually a happy coincidence for us. In the meantime, we had found the land to plant the trees. This was a real challenge given the fact that we are surrounded by the coastal grasslands, as I mentioned before, and that we are situated in the least forested province of Flanders. Luckily, we found the available plots in Ostend, where there were plans for a new city forest. So Ostend is only 10 miles away from Dixmude, which is really close. Here we have the billboard on our venue to communicate on our action. It says carbon neutral without noise. And this is a picture of our tree sponsors on one of the tree planting days. We saw them as our ambassadors, and they still are. They hailed from everywhere. Some of them were long-term concert visitors, others were volunteers, and still others we did not know from scratch. But from time to time, we still organize activities for our sponsors. On this slide, you see the inauguration of the definitive billboard, which was followed by a picnic. And this is how it looked a couple of months ago. The trees are still very young. They were planted really densely, and through natural selection, it will become something like this in a couple of years. So it's a park-like forest with a mixture of trees and shrub. But does it stop with a forest? To us, it does not. As I said, we are constantly looking for new opportunities to challenge ourselves, thereby using our network of stakeholders. And one of the examples we now started up is this food assembly, which we organize weekly since the beginning of this month. The food assembly brings together local farmers and consumers of Dixmude, consumers which we again recruited in our larger network, and even way beyond this time. The overall idea is to keep the chain of production as small as possible and to reduce transports and to make sure that the local farmers receive a fair and decent price for their products. Although it gathered a lot of positive responses, the forest project was not seen by everybody as a fairy tale. I would like to share some of the criticisms we encountered. First of all, we got some cynical reactions as if we were modern Catholic indulgence buyers, paying off our debt by buying trees. In defense, we see the forest not as a separate story, but embedded in our general philosophy. We've done many efforts to reduce our footprint, and we will continue to do so in the future. Moreover, we think the project would be quite far-fetched if it only were to pay off our environmental debts. We wanted a strong symbolic action to raise awareness on climate change, and we think the whole forest project really succeeded in being so. Other criticisms, well, apparently some nature conservatory organizations were quite irritated that we didn't work with them for the reforesting part. This was difficult to grasp for us. In the end, we all shared the same purpose, so we thought. And in the category mildly critical, people wondered why on earth a venue should do stuff like that. Shouldn't we better stick to our core business of organizing concerts? And in order to answer this last question, I would like to refer to the beautiful phrase of W.H. Auden, in which he underlines the importance of forests as a subconscious of our culture. How we treat our trees says a lot about who we are. To put it boldly, the enemies of woods, according to Auden, are always the enemies of culture and humanity. And that's maybe something to think about. We strongly believe that the cultural sector is an engine for change. We and all of you, as being part of the live music sector, have a wide and international reach, audience, artists, booking agents, etc. I believe we have the potential and the creativity to be the perfect change agents in social and in ecological matters. Does this mean that every venue should plant a forest or become carbon neutral? No, of course not. There's so much else you can do, and there are many inspiring examples. If you just take a look at the fine work the people do at Klaverfabrieken in Denmark, or at Patronaat in the Netherlands, or what happens in the demo project, as I mentioned before. Does the project fit the definition? To be honest, we never looked at ourselves as social entrepreneurs, and in fact I had quite a hard time to give a personal definition of the word. To me, the case seems overall much more ambitious, but the definition still fits our ecological actions and the general philosophy in which the project was rooted. And to conclude, I would like to share with you 3 possible lessons in order to create a successful social project based on this story. First of all, start at the very basis with the DNA of the organization. Social entrepreneurship is only successful if there is a bottom-up approach. Otherwise, you remain at the surface. And secondly, seek cross-sectoral guidance and expertise, as we did in the many phases of our ecological journey. Dare to go out of your comfort zone and look over the walls to what happens in other sectors. And finally, create ambassadors and a community and search for people who support your ideas and help carrying out your message. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you for your attention, and we would like to take some time to answer your questions. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, we do get support from the local government. We are a venue which is part of the club circuit, which is also part of Live DNA. But it's maybe important to say that that was the reason we really wanted to do this with external finances and not to put any government money into this project. I don't understand this question. Could you be a bit more specific? we always remain a venue. That's what we are. There's no way in telling another story. Because we wanted to avoid that people thought, oh, it's easy if you put up this whole campaign, this whole forest project with government money. That didn't really feel right. So it was really a choice to not do it with government money. Of course, we do lots of actions, daily actions, and they are embedded in our daily activities. So in a way, we use our government money to work as ecological as possible. But for this forest project, we really wanted to do it differently. And it was also a really nice experiment in attracting sponsorships and the crowdfunding campaign as well, because we are a small venue in a very rural area, so it's not so easy to find sponsor money for our daily operations, our concerts. That's really not easy. It's very hard. So it was really interesting to see if we added this ecological value, what that would do for potential sponsors. It is the forest is an added value indeed. Do we see other venues following our example? Well, not yet, but yeah, we are part of the demo project, and there we exchange a lot of know-how on sustainable development, and I feel that we have a lot to share. So I hope other venues will follow our example, not by planting a forest, but by considering or taking into consideration ecology, maybe a bit more. Yes, I know about Patronat. I didn't know about Gebouwd. But that's true. They are very active as well. And I think I forgot to mention other venues, because I'm sure there are others as well working on it. Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Marta. I'm going to talk about the... Can you hear me now? I think so. My name is Marta. I'm going to talk about the Norwegian festival Vinjerock and our project on integrating refugees, which is one of several social entrepreneurship projects that we have. If you have any questions, please write them in the box and I'll try to answer them in the end. So first, briefly about myself. I'm 32 years old. I'm educated as an actress and I live in the Valley Vang that you can see in this picture. It is located in the middle of southern Norway and is covering 1,500 square kilometers and less than 1,600 cities. So even more rural than Marianne's place. In the mountains of Vang, some at 1,060 meters above sea level, some local youth have arranged Vinjerock for the last 11 years, which is a music and activity festival with 600 volunteers and 3,000 tickets that get sold out in 2 seconds. So it's quite popular. We play rock, pop, and folk music, and we provide over 70 activities like hikes, courses, and competitions. And I'd like to show you a short film clip so that you can have a feeling of our festival.
Hey babe, er du slik som meg? Går du rundt i ring og lurer på hvem du som mayday? Du valgte så, når du sto i stroberegnene som en naturlov. Og jeg tror, jeg forstår, børst verden store skulder og kjent pusten slå. Gulvet bryst og øynene der spør, men jeg står alene og jeg vet ikke om jeg tør. For med danser på moro skyld, og gjør og hjertet er styr.
So now you know a little bit more about our festival, and I'll move on to talking about today's topic. I have tried to make a definition on what social entrepreneurship is to us and come up with this. Social entrepreneurship is to make an effort regarding a social challenge in our community. I believe it is that simple. There are plenty of social challenges to pick from, and the important thing is to try to make an effort. The reasons we could do it and the way we have chosen to work on it is this. We have the time, the money, and the ability to make an effort. We choose to work on social challenges where we see that we can actually make a difference. And we choose to work on subjects that make our festival better. We've got project money from Norske Konsertarrangører, which is the Norwegian member of Live DMA, and Sparebankstiftelsen DNB to make our project come alive. So in 2015, I got invited through my job at the Volunteer Center to work on 3 diversity projects. One is about recruiting local youth, which we are depending on to maintain the local connection. The second is about making sure we are as adapted as possible to people with disabilities. And the third one, which is the one I'm going to talk about today, is about integrating refugees living in our community. The project was developed based both on social challenges that we saw in our community, with refugees struggling to get integrated and make a network among the locals, and the fact that we thought a more diverse audience would make us stronger after all. The audience at Vinjerock is traditionally a quite homogeneous group of people. 80% are between 18 and 30 years old. 60% has more than 3 years of higher education, and most of the audience are very familiar with and equipped to staying outdoors and handling the Norwegian nature. The situation regarding refugees in Vang is that we have a refugee camp that houses about 150 refugees, and we settle about 5 refugees in our municipality per year through the National Directorate of Integration and Diversity. I know many of them struggle to get integrated in our community and make Norwegian friends, and I have learned through my job at the Volunteer Center that working as a volunteer together with other volunteers is a great way to both learn the language, the culture, and be equal and useful in a difficult everyday life as a refugee or asylum seeker. So that is what the project at Vinjerock is about, bringing in refugees as volunteers, working side by side with the other 600 volunteers at the festival in the different volunteer groups like the crew, the cleaning team, kitchen, sales team, barn, etc. We have to pick people that speak well Norwegian or English to make sure they can communicate both with the audience and the other volunteers and staff. And we do that together with the management at the refugee camp and the introduction center. And the others you can see here are the other local organizations that operate with on the 3 diversity projects. And this is the first tip for you. Establish partnerships in your local community. Make good research on what the actual challenges your community are, and find the organizations that work with those challenges or groups and cooperate with them. It will both make your job easier by enabling you to split the responsibility with other organizations, and it will make you more likely to succeed at your goal as you have a better fundament for your project. My job is to make sure that the refugees have all the equipment and all the information they need to survive in the Norwegian outdoors for 4 days and to do a good job as volunteers. And the information is very important because I am depending on the willingness of all the different leaders to bring in my refugees in their groups. They, of course, send out a lot of information to the volunteers in their groups before the festival, and they teach the job at the beginning of the festival. But with a little various language skills among the refugees and various understanding of cultural expectations and social rules in our country, it is my job to make sure that they are ready to perform so that the group leaders don't need to spend extra time on explaining or translating. And this is the second tip I'd like to give you. To have a project like this, it is important to acknowledge the job that comes with it and place the responsibility at one or some specificness in the organization. If the staff or the volunteers are experiencing the project as a burden, I don't think it's going to last. The refugees also need some equipment that they usually don't have in their situation. With the project money, we have bought sleeping bags, mattresses, and backpacks that they get to borrow. They sleep in our labotel that you can see, which is the tent that we hire out to audience who don't have or want to sleep in own tents. We all buy them some clothes, mountain shoes, wool underwear, and wind and waterproof outerwear. And this they get to keep so that they can keep on using the Norwegian outdoors as a social arena. When we started in 2015, we brought 4 refugees working as volunteers. In 2016, we had 8 plus 8 youth coming to visit one day at the festival. And this year we had 8 refugees and 7 youth working as volunteers. And my third tip to you is take small steps and build on your experience. Don't start more than you can handle. We have learned a lot along the way, and since I believe since we haven't aimed too high too quickly, we haven't had any big problems with this project. But I feel one challenge is always knowing how much information is required. For example, the concept of sleeping outdoors, the Norwegian summer, what to eat when you don't have a fridge or a cooking stove. Is there a shower, or do they have to swim in the ice cold water? How much responsibility do they have themselves to get to know people or understand their talk? And the concept of the festival. The second year, we had a guy in the project who loved working as a volunteer, but he had no interest in music or partying. So we are better now at informing and recruiting people that can embrace the whole concept of the festival. And also for the group leaders and organization, does the project demand any extra work for them? Who makes sure the refugees understand their tasks if their Norwegian language isn't fluent? And what social or cultural understanding do we take for granted when we present a task or a message? These are questions we have to always remember and ask ourselves. Besides working together with Norwegians, the festival brings so many other good moments for integration, communication, and cultural exchange. They get to learn some of the best musicians that Norway has to offer. They experience the Norwegian drinking culture, which, for good or bad, is a big part of our habits. And they meet a lot of different people from all over Norway. Many of them find the everyday life in Vang very quiet, and they find it hard to make friends. And most Norwegians are a bit harder to get in touch with than what they are used to in most African countries or in the Middle East. We tend to open up when we drink alcohol and when we are outdoors in the nature. It is said about Norwegians that we never say hi to a stranger unless we are in the forest, the mountains, or at sea. And I am sorry to say that that is not far from the truth. Which is why a cultural and outdoor festival or event is a good arena for integration. This year, I actually found some of the refugees interacting in some games with their Lavo neighbors. Games that sometimes occur when Norwegians get together, especially in the countryside. Um, the most famous of these games is kicking a hat off the stick, which is the central part of our traditional folk dance. And when you master this skill, you have the best opportunity to impress a Norwegian crowd. And this guy, Anas from Syria, he made some very good consideration about the work experience. He found that in Norway, the workers were equal to and respected just like the boss, as opposed to in Syria, where he experienced the hierarchy between workers and leaders much more present. So, if this is our definition on social entrepreneurship, and this is the challenge where we aim to make a difference, I feel that we have reached our goals. The refugees in the project learns a lot about Norwegian culture and experience ways to get in touch with Norwegians. They get important experience with work, with the volunteer work and the glimpse of Norwegian working culture. And they get a network with both locals and people from all over Norway, which can make a difference when they later will apply for jobs, apartments. And this is also important. We think that our festival benefits from diversity. It gives us new ideas and wider perspectives. We get to learn and to show the world that cultural arenas and nature is for everyone. And our staff, volunteers, and audience learn that making friends or working with refugees, which can be a new experience for some, is not dangerous, but on the contrary, could be both interesting, educational, and fun. As a bonus effect, this project gives us a lot of press coverage, like both local and newspapers, speeches at different music industry gatherings, and of course the fact that I sit here now sharing our experience with you. The picture in the bottom is from a debate about using the outdoors as an arena for integrating refugees. So our goal is, of course, to inspire other communities or music festivals to make an effort on the issue. To sum up the lessons to be learned, establish partnerships in your local community, make sure someone in the organization is in charge of the project, and take small steps and build on your experience. Don't start more than you can handle. So that's all I had for you today. Is there any questions? Let's see. Yes, I believe it's not unique Norwegian thing that saying hi to strangers is if you know one, it's always easier to get in touch with more people. So giving people the opportunity to get a network, make friends, will make it much easier to make more friends. Questions in the making. Okay, any other questions, please send them to my email that Kes will give you. Okay, one more. Was it not a usual thing to accept anyone who wants to apply as a volunteer before? Of course, anyone who applies for to work as a volunteer is accepted on equal ground. But the main thing in our is to give them the opportunity through the equipment and the extra information, because I think for someone who is brand new in Norway, it is a bit difficult to understand the concept of this festival and to find a way to get into it. But now some of these guys who has been volunteers, for example, last year, they are now applying on their own and coming back as volunteers on their own. Yeah, and of course that is our goal too, to use this project to show that anyone can be a volunteer, and the nature and our festival is for everybody. So we hope to have a lot of new volunteers coming from all over. I also have to say that for the 600 volunteer jobs, there are 1,000 applies. So yeah, we make special campaign in the camp. No, and that is one challenge I could also mention is we could always do more to like make people get together or interact. We haven't done any small campaigns. I think it is important to there is a balance on helping people to interact and to give them the responsibility to take initiative themselves. So, for example, what I showed you about the games they were playing, I didn't do anything to make that happen, and I'm so glad that that happened just on its own, if that's the way to put it. Okay, I'd like to just end a quote from one of the refugees. Honestly, the best thing was that up there I did not feel like a refugee. All the people I met treated us with respect. I also got some new friends. I want to come back every year. So with that, I say thank you so much for your attention. I hope someone out there feels inspired to use the music or culture industry to make an effort on social challenges. And I'm giving the word back to Ken. Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody. I suppose everybody can hear and see me now. Yeah, probably. So those were the 3 interesting case studies. I'm gonna show you once more the three definitions the three co-presenters used, and I think it shows that they have similarities, but there are also differences between the three. And I think one of the goals of this webinar was to show that there is not just one approach to social entrepreneurship, and there's not just one definition. There are just several approaches, and in the end, they all have the same goal, and that is to make a change and to be bold. And I think they also showed the three co-presenters that the music and the cultural sector in general also are a perfect means to reach a specific goal. Just like Marianne also stressed that cultural sector is could be the engine because of its creativity, could be an engine of change in society. I think that was very well showed. And then it doesn't really matter how you define social entrepreneurship. And before I'm going to ask you again if you see yourself as a social entrepreneur, I'm also going to show you once more the 9 lessons in total the 3 co-presenters presented to you. And also here you see similarities in the lessons they want to give the viewer and you, but there are also some differences. But the similarities are that, for example, Marianne and Enneko, they both stress the importance of organizing your own internal, and also Marta, basically, that organizing your own organization is very important. You have to start at the basis, and it should be a bottom-up approach, and you have to make someone in charge of a particular project without being the boss, but like in a horizontal way more. And also the searching for external help and external expertise, whether it's in your the same community, but it should be without your own comfort zone, and maybe in another sector, and also in another country, like Enneko told. And also the ambassadors are important, just like the establishment of partnerships in your local community. So look for people who are willing to fight, to put it in that word, to fight with you for your goal. I think that was shown nicely as well. So I hope these 3 presentations and the 3 case studies were interesting. I think they were. I think they were a good example of what music and the cultural sector can mean outside its own box. Maybe there are some more questions either to me or to the 3 co-presenters. And we've got some time, definitely maybe 10 minutes if there's questions, and if not, then here are the email addresses of the co-presenters and myself, and you can always get into contact, and hopefully this will be an inspiration for you to get into action as well. And only if it's only for exchanging knowledge or ideas, then that would be a great profit of this webinar. So are there any more questions? I'm looking at the chat box. It stays quiet. Well, then, if someone still is thinking about a question in the meantime, I would like to thank Enneko, Marianne, and Marta a lot for their cooperation and their stories and sharing it. Nikos and Avra, definitely, they are behind the scenes, but they have been very important for this webinar, for this series as well. Thank you, Audrey. Hope to see you soon again. So next week, there is a webinar about social inclusion through music. And it's given by Antonia Forari. It's at the same day and the same time. Mariana is typing something. You're welcome. And maybe the 4 speakers can be put on the screen to the 3 other speakers on the central screen, so we can wave at the viewers, and then we will call it a day. There's an echo. And done. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, the contact information.
Right.
I think the contact information will also be posted on the Stamp website. You can also make a picture with your phone of these email addresses, and then you've got them as well.